Professors in Minnesota tell parents, if you really oppose racism, you need to leave your kids in the public schools. Of course, if all of the white kids leave for the academically better options of private and homeschooling, who will the public school teachers have left to bully with social justice, hate, and discrimination? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and can we just give Minnesota back to the Swedes? Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start with a plea from earnest leftist college professors who say white families must keep their kids in public schools to prove they're not racist. In other words, have your kids strapped down in the front row of a public school, have them be lectured to how their white privilege and their white supremacy is all deeply ingrained in their skin color until they feel so neurotic they kill yourselves. Do that to themselves so that they feel so neurotic they kill themselves. That's how you prove that these kids, you're really fighting racism.
Oh, of course. And this pair of Minnesota professors, they say one of the ways in which white kids can demonstrate, or the parents, I guess, should be demonstrating their commitment to the anti-racism. As we know, you said, stay in those public schools. What did you say? Strap down? Be locked in. And it's coming from the University of Minnesota's Abby Rambalski and Carleton College's Anita Chikatur. And they both wrote an article. They're professors of education, of course. And they wrote an article in the minpost.com. They say it's like a magazine online. That saying that white parents who transfer their kids to private or charter schools end up putting funding for public schools at serious risk. Breaking news. They say white America owes black students a large educational debt.
How so? How is that so? For over 100 years, black kids have been going to public school absolutely free of charge. We used the federal government to get, when they weren't being allowed in places like Alabama, we forced them in. They have in fact, they have more educational opportunities than most white kids do. Once you get black kids who succeed even a little bit, there are so many, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are so many scholarships and programs that want these kids. This mania for inclusion. If you've got we saw it in yesterday's show, right? That if you're if you have a typical kid with your typical resume, high school resume, you got maybe a 1 in 4 shot in getting into college in North Carolina. But you're black, that skyrockets to 90%. We're already giving kids, African-American kids, huge legs up. Legs, arms, feet, and all sorts of other appendages up. We owe them what exactly? And at what point do we have the right, as with the public schools, to say to the public schools, why are we obligated to pay for your failure? You're telling us now, rather than confront the failure of American public schools, tell moms and dads, particularly white ones, that you need to keep your kids here. We're not going to fix them. We're not going to make them any better. But we need the money. We need the taxpayer money to keep not educating your kids. And when we're not educating your kids, we're also not educating the black kids who are way behind the white kids in the public schools. Why? For a variety of reasons that the public schools cannot fix and will not fix. So why keep paying for them? Why aren't you demanding, instead of from the public schools, demand from the federal government that you pay to get all those black kids into non-public schools where they'll get a better education?
They didn't put it eloquently like that. What they said is that the maintenance of the public school enrollment, so you need to enroll the kids, but you also need to vote yes. Always vote yes on increasing taxes.
More money, less performance. That's what we want.
They say that helps pay this debt that we owe them,
yes,
remember? But they said, quote, funding for public schools is a societal good and supports our democracy now and in the future.
Well, why is it? If public schools don't work, why is supporting it a public? You all liberals, you sit there and say Donald Trump is a failure. So I come back to you and say Donald Trump is a failure, so therefore support his candidacy. You would see the stupid illogic of that, right? Why are public schools a good, right? Why? If you can use that money to educate every kid in this country, including low-performing inner-city kids, in better ways, why not do it? Why is every Democrat politician, why is every progressive I know against school choice? In other words, let African-American parents choose better schools. Why are you against that? Because what you progressives owe a debt to is not black kids. You owe a debt to the teachers' unions, right? big liberal teachers unions who use all kinds of money taken away from teachers to advertise for Democrat candidates, and who allow this to happen to begin with. It is shameful. It is unforgivable. It's the public school system. It is progressives who run the public schools who are keeping African American kids ignorant, and you will not let them find a better path. And now you're telling parents, white parents, be like us. Right? Fail along. If you really cared about your kids, you'd let them fail alongside black kids in the name of solidarity. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It is quite dumb. And as we hear in the media today and the protests, riots that are happening, you can't say all lives matter, right? You have to say...
Excuse me, all damn lives matter.
Okay, well, you have to say, according to the rioters, you have to say Black Lives Matter, even if you completely disagree with the organization of Black Lives Matter, but you agree, yes, Black Lives Matter, and that's included in all lives, but you can't do that. You're not allowed.
Nope.
That's what they're saying right here when they say culturally relevant public schools are an important facet of society that values Black lives and BIPOC children.
Right. So in other words, we're going to teach ideology, not subject matter. The public schools are places where the kids are going to learn to support Black Lives Matter and never question a word from them. They're going to get more and more radical curriculum, more anti-American history. That's what we're doing for your kids for all that money. And if you turn away from that, then you're a racist. That's the go-to gambit of the progressive left. That's a racist.
And of course, when you take a look at Rimbalski and Chikatur, they, of course, are members of a far-left organization called the Education for Liberation Network, whose goal is to be a political force in the state of Minnesota to contend with the status quo of colonial education that prioritizes Eurocentric curricula, predominantly white educators and administrators.
And what that means is math and science and
yes.
reading and writing.
Translation.
This colonialist educations that they're fighting right now, it's actually called achievement-based education. It's what the purpose of school should be, teaching your kids literacy, math, the ability to function, to speak, to write. That's what when they tell you that your public schools are colonialist, that's what they mean. And how are they going to replace that? Not with greater levels of black literacy, not to supersede white colonial schools and make blacks hugely prolific in math and science. No, it is to forego the teaching of content matter altogether and teach only black liberation, which is full of stuff like Black Lives Matter, unless those blacks are killed by other blacks. Black Lives Matter, unless they're unborn black babies, right? Black Lives Matter, unless they're black conservatives. What a honking, stinking pile of crap that is.
Oh, California, your schools have begun, so I'm sorry for all of you. Apparently, we know that pretty much all of California is doing online learning, as we'll call it, which is actually good timing because Governor Gavin Newsom actually just signed into law making the ethnic studies course required for graduation. He just did this a couple weeks ago, but now it's going to be implemented in 2021, 2022. So technically it's not required yet, but... You know they're already getting their practice this season, so they're getting started. The Santa Barbara Unified School District, English 9, has an ethnic studies curriculum that is when you see what they're doing, I'll explain. But it's their English 9 class. It's supposed to be English class, but it's ethnic studies, and their curriculum. What they have is ridiculous. They have a colorful syllabus for the course, and it was sent to the students as a PowerPoint. So we know this because, again, everything's online. So they had a PowerPoint that was presented. In the first slide, they have an image of a cheerful Ms. Powers, is her name, who wears sneakers and a t-shirt with the Black Power Communist Fist salute. Waves to the students in front of a backdrop that features the Black Lives Matter logo and, of course, a rainbow flag. Have to add all the color. And in the next slide, she tells the students a bit about herself. My name is Nicole Powers. I am a biracial, Asian American cisgender female who uses she, her, Ella pronouns, like E-L-L-A. Ella?
I have no idea.
Ella. I have no idea. And then below the introductory slide, it's listed for the course, the units of study that they're going to be taking a look at for just that first semester through December. Week 1, they're going to devote to community building. And then for the next couple weeks after that, it's going to be about my place in the community. Mm-hmm. And for week 6 to 9, it's going to be protest. Just straight protest. And they're not actually saying quite what they're going to do with the protest, but being in California, depending if you're in northern well, I guess it's Santa Barbara. So if you take the trip all the way to Portland, you can just, participate.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not covering the Tea Party.
And then in weeks 10 to 12, it's going to be about intersectionality, of course. Weeks 13 to 15 are about stereotypes and internalized racism. And again, I remind everyone, this is an English class.
It's an English
please
class.
Weigh in.
And that's my point. This is your English class.
Yes.
And by the way, this is the future. You think this is reach some kind of critical mass? We are just beginning the transformation. In 10, 15 years, your kids' classes, all of them, are going to be funneled through the realm of social justice. What do you think all this cultural math stuff we've reported on is? What the professors we talked about last week who made the argument that 2 + 2 is only 4 because of white Eurocentric, phallocentric imperialism. This is the norm now. If you think for 1 second, you've seen it, you've not seen it yet. What's going to happen in the future is you're going to have pretty much classroom by PowerPoint. You're going to have all of these prefabricated lessons, all of these prefabricated programs. Teachers are going to not be making their own lesson plans. It's going to be handed out. Black Lives Matter curriculum, 1619 curriculum, Planned Parenthood sexual curriculum. These are not things that teachers have any responsibility for. They're told to shut up and pass them on to the kids. And this is what they're using your public schools for. 100% pure and unadulterated agitation, revolutionaryism, this kind of destructive, this is the kind of stuff that is lurching us over the edge here. It starts in California. Sadly, things that go on in California don't stay there. You watch what's going to happen unless you're paying attention, as Katie said earlier, letting us know. Pay very close attention in these opening weeks of school, what your kids are doing, because you're going to see it. And at some point, hopefully, it's going to make you mad enough to do something about it.
And we really, really want to see if you're able to, Mom and Dad, get a hold of the various syllabi you have for all your courses. But particularly, I want to see English class because I want to know, are the kids reading books? And if they are reading books, what are those books? Because in this class, they're going to read If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Rousseau. It's about a girl who used to be a boy at her old school, book 1. Then they're going to read A Young People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Just take your lighter and put it up to that book. They're going to read A Queer History of the United States for Young People by Michael Bronsky. And that's for the fall 2020, okay? They're going to read, that's what they're going to read.
And what will they never read?
Any class, Fahrenheit 451.
Anything like a traditional history of the country.
Exactly.
So you're going to teach kids straw men, right? You're not even teaching them the racist narrative. They're not going to learn about 1620 Pilgrims and Indians. They're not going to learn about Lewis and Clark. They're not going to learn about all the Battle of 1812. All you're going to get now, forever and ever, is the straw man. Of course, America's racist. We'll just assume that without any evidence, without any proof, without any historical content, and we'll let you see how America sucks through the minds of Marxists, homosexuals, transgender people, feminists, black people, Hispanics.
And Mom and Dad, if you want to take a look at it yourself, a lot of this garbage that they're teaching, the Black Lives Matter stuff, is coming from the Peace Project, and that's spelled PEACE, because we can't just be the Peace Project. It's not a typo. They have the Black Lives Matter resource guide there, and all this information is put there. Second thing I want to say is, Mom and Dad, again, I'm reminding you, please send us your syllabi. All you have to do is email us, askduke@fpeusa.org. Just give us the name of the school or what the course and grade level were. We're not going to publish your name. Just get us the information and we'll verify it. Since we're going to keep talking about language and English and all of that gobbledygook, this summer a subcommittee of an organization called the Conference on College Composition and Communication, it's like alliteration, they decided to publish a list of demands, as they always do. This subcommittee actually called itself Why We Can't Breathe! Exclamation point. The demands include the abolition of white mainstream English
There you go.
as a way to make way for the black linguistic justice. And of course, on their little website, they have a list of demands. And they have 5, we'll call it 5 demands, but it's really 5 giant categories of demands because within those demands, as you can see, they're long-winded to begin with. They have at least 6 or 7 subset demands within each one. So
of course they do.
They don't know English or math. So This group, this subcommittee, is made up of 5 English professors. Are you on there? I didn't see your name.
No.
And a writing scholar. I'm going to name them because they need to be named. April Baker Bell is the chair from Michigan State University. Bonnie J. Williams Ferrier is from California State University, Fullerton. Davina Jackson is from Boston University. Lamar Johnson from Michigan State University. Carmen Kennard is from Texas Christian University, and Tierra McMurray is from the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Well, first thing I would say, it's an awfully undiverse committee when you've got one poor man, right? And you've got all those women.
Carmen?
We'll guarantee it Carmen's a woman in this context.
Maybe they don't identify.
Maybe they don't identify. Ella is their pronoun.
Ella.
Look, so where's Daryl from The Office? Remember how Daryl would have would help Michael Scott with his racial conversations? Zippity zoppity, show me the boppity. Remember what Mike showing Mike his interracial conversation with his black colleagues, where he would teach him such things as going Mach 5, fleecing it out. How about that? This is literally what we're dealing with here. That we've decided now that purely arbitrary, that the idea that there is correct grammar, the idea that language works along predictable rules. If you don't have predictable rules, you don't have language, right? Which means there's got to be subjects and verb, there's got to be pronouns. Yes, there's got to even be a way to determine between genders. Ooh, right? You have to have that in a language. And so what they're saying is now, the way people talk, I don't even know what that means. The way white people talk is wrong.
White mainstream.
What does that mean anyway? And by the way, no kid is born speaking white. No kid is born that way. You have to acclimate, right? And as it is already, African-American slang has probably already has a disproportionate effect on how language is growing, right? How many euphemisms from black culture are part of the language? Rather than let that evolve, right? No, we have to halt the speaking of white language so we can have what? All black language all the time?
Yeah. And they're calling it, in their list of demands, they want a black linguistic consciousness. So if you're conscious of black
So what they're telling you, Katie, is that when a kid in college writes from the perspective of black slang, it's like that scene from Airplane way back in the day, right? Where I speak jive, ma'am. When no one, you got a kid writing all Ebonics, all jive. That's the model. A kid who actually uses language correctly, it's not. You don't ignore it now. You have to give it a bad grade. You have to punish kids who write badly, who write well. Kids who write well and use subject to verb agreement and know how to use pronouns, those are the kids who are doing it wrong now. They're the ones implicated in racism. We got to teach those white kids to abandon what made them good writers. And then, here's the other kick in the pants. Once white kids start to try to write like black kids, then they'll be cultural appropriating.
And it goes to their very first point. They say, we demand that teachers stop using academic language and standard English as the accepted communicative norm.
Hold on.
Which reflects white mainstream English.
Hold on. Are you telling me that I have permission from Black Lives Matter people to stand up in class the first day of class next week and say, hey, Cheerin, how you doing, Cheerin? Did you enjoy your lunch? Did you have some Dr. Pfeffer and Kern dogs? Let's talk about education here now. Are they telling me they just said that we demand that educators quit speaking like academics? Quit using big words. Are you telling me now that I can talk that like Fred Sanford? I can talk like Fred Sanford from Sanford. I can talk like that now. You telling me that I can do a Red Fox skit or a Dave Chappelle skit in my classroom? You telling me that?
Well, you're at least getting a little bit closer to understanding your children, like the kids in the classroom. Like Dave Chappelle, they may have heard of. You're talking about Sanford. They're not going to understand at all what you're saying.
If you don't want me talking white in the classroom, what exactly should I speak?
It's time for some real education. The Dream of the Rood, also known as The Dream of the Cross, is an Old English lyric poem, the earliest surviving dream poem, and one of the finest religious poems in the English language. The Anglo-Saxon poem was once attributed to Cadman or Cynewulf. In a dream, the unknown poet beholds a beautiful tree, the rood or cross, on which Christ died. The rood tells him its own story. Forced to be the instrument of the Savior's death, it describes how it suffered the nail wounds, spear shafts, and insults along with Christ to fulfill God's will. Once bloodstained and horrible, it is now the resplendent sign of mankind's redemption.
Yeah, and this is really a beautiful thought for probably 1,200 years ago, maybe. It's the idea that Christ is the Savior of all living things. Christ is the God of all life. He is responsible through the Father for all of that. And so the idea that the tree, the cross, that was once a living tree, well, why wouldn't the animals, like the animals in the manger, why wouldn't animals respond to the Creator God in ways that human beings, in our sin, on the sinless animals, why wouldn't sinless animals respond to the Creator in a much different way than sinful people? Whereas we nailed him to a tree, the human beings he came to save, would the tree itself, how would that feel about that? It's an interesting poetic situation that we have in this anonymous poet. And let me read you some of it because it's really quite beautiful. Of course, you have to know Old English to be able to read and understand this, but we've got a very reliable modern translation. You get a sense of it. And it is the tree, the once living tree that now has been torn down to crucify somebody, but it's not just somebody. It begins like this. Part of it is the tree reflecting. It happened long ago. I remember it still. I was hewn down at the holt's end, stirred from my stock. Strong foes seized me there, worked in me an awful spectacle, ordered me to heave up their criminals. Those warriors bore me on their shoulders until they set me down upon a mountain. Enemies enough fastened me there. I saw then the Lord of mankind hasten with much courage, willing to mount up upon me. The young warrior stripped himself then. That was God Almighty. Strong and firm of purpose, he climbed up onto the high gallows, magnificent in the sight of many. Then he wished to redeem mankind. I quaked when the warrior embraced me, yet I dared not bow down to the ground, collapse to the earthly regions, but I had to stand there firm. The rood was reared. I heaved the mighty king, the Lord of heaven. I dared not topple or reel. They skewered me with dark nails, wounds easily seen upon me, treacherous strokes yawning open. I dared injure none of them. They shamed us both together. I was besplattered with blood, sluicing out from the man's side after launching forth his soul. Many vicious deeds have I endured on that hill. I saw the God of hosts, racked in agony. Darkness had covered over the clouds, the corpse of the sovereign. Shadows oppressed the brightest splendor, black underbreakers. All of creation wept, mourning the king's fall. Christ was upon the cross. What a beautiful reflection from an innocent natural world to the wicked human world that did such a deed.
All right, as always, you can follow us on Facebook and Parler. And if you have any questions for us, please feel free to visit freedomproject.com/askduke and send those questions our way. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. And since I'm back out at the farm and it's not quite fall yet, but it's fall-esque, caramel apples are in basically all I'm going to be doing this fall. So caramel apples, just so you know, were created by a craft employee named Dan Walker, and it was on accident. He was experimenting with leftover Halloween inventory, and he was trying to melt caramels and then incorporate different fruits and see what happened, and boom, caramel apples, everybody.
And that's our show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.